Hi, I'm Bear.
And I'm Amy.
And in today's Lucid Labs, we're going to teach you everything you need to know about flowcharts.
That's right. First, we'll provide you with a high-level overview. Then, we'll dive deeper into flowchart symbols and their meanings. And finally, we'll walk through how to make one together.
Now, if you're watching this video, you're probably asking, what exactly is a flowchart? Well, a flowchart is a type of diagram that depicts a process or system, using conventional symbols like rectangles and diamonds to provide additional context and improve user comprehension. These shapes are connected with lines or arrows that are used to visualize the direction or flow of a particular sequence of steps or processes. They're widely used to document, study, plan, improve, and communicate processes and systems which can often be very complex. These types of visuals are essential, particularly when trying to communicate something a little more complicated, like a cross-functional business process or a diagram of how you plan to connect your app to another program's API. But flowcharts are useful in many roles and use cases, even when they aren't complex, because they make abstract concepts like process steps and system connections very easy for even non-technical audiences to understand.
To help us understand this concept, I'm going to give you a challenge. When I say go, you'll have a few seconds to read through a set of instructions from start to finish. Let's see how far you can make it. Are you ready? Set, go. Nice work. How did it go? If you weren't able to make it to the end, don't sweat it. We're going to try it again, except this time, we're going to visualize the instructions using a flowchart. Let's see if it makes a difference. We'll reset the timer and ready, set, go. Well, how was it this time? Did you notice any difference? Most people do. In fact, most find that the simple addition of symbols and lines helps them to do three things. 1, identify specific steps. 2, simplify complex information. And 3, communicate ideas faster.
Exactly. A flowchart literally changes how you interact with information. But knowing which symbols to use and when to use them can also impact the effectiveness of the flowcharts we create. So let's walk through some of the most common flowchart symbols or shapes. This flowchart uses 4 different symbols to represent a morning routine. Let's see how they work together. The first is a symbol called the terminator, or sometimes the start or end shape. In flowcharts, this symbol represents anywhere a process or system terminates, that is, the start and endpoints, even potential outcomes of a particular flow. The next symbol we see is called a process symbol. It represents a process, action, or function and is the most widely used symbol in all of flowcharting. We can see it used as 3 different steps. Alarm rings, hit the snooze button, and climb out of bed. Next up is the decision diamond. This indicates a fork in your flow, which is the result of a decision or condition that changes the processes, actions, or functions that follow it. Most of the time, these are written in a yes, no, or true, false format. The flowchart path may split off into different branches. In this flowchart, it asks us whether we're ready to get up, and then gives us 2 possible outcomes. The last symbol used in this flowchart is the delay symbol. This symbol is used to depict any passage of time during a process. In this case, it's being used to show the snooze duration. And finally, to connect all of our shapes together, we use lines or connectors. These indicate the process direction or sequence and can be used as straight lines, unidirectional arrows, or double-sided arrows, depending on the connection or relationship you'd like to show. In our example here, they point us in the direction of the next step we should take until we reach the end of our process.
All right, Bear. I think they're ready to take things up a notch with another example. At first glance, do you notice any of the same symbols Bear explained? Take the sales call step, for example. You should now know that this is the place to start because it uses the start and end symbol. Or maybe you recognize that customer buys product and order entry are both process symbols used to showcase an action. But there may be a few new symbols as well. Check out the credit form step. This is called the document symbol. It represents the input or output of a document. For example, in this step, a credit form document is being inputted or received as a part of the order entry, while later in the credit issued report step, it is an output, or in other words, it is being sent out to management. At the end of this diagram, you'll notice another new shape. This is called the off-page connector / link shape. It is frequently used within complex charts and connects separate elements across multiple pages for easy reference. And finally, we have swim lanes. Using the metaphor of lanes in a pool and swim lane provides clarity and accountability by placing process steps within a horizontal or vertical swim lanes of a particular employee group or department. Now that we've walked through some of the most common flowchart symbols, it's time to try creating one yourself.
But before you do, let's talk about what you're going to need to create these flowcharts. You could use a pen or paper, but it's going to be way easier for you to use a diagramming application. Today, we're going to use Lucid's intelligent diagramming application, Lucidchart. And you can too, for free actually. By clicking on the pop-up link, you can access Lucid's website and have a free account in just a few seconds. That way, you can follow along with us and begin creating your own flowcharts as well.
All right, there are 5 steps you need to think about when you're creating a flowchart. They are, first, define your purpose and scope. Second, identify the tasks and then place them in chronological order. 3, format tasks by type and correspond that to the correct symbol. 4, draw your chart. And 5, confirm your flowchart.
All right, let's build out a flowchart together using those steps. First, we need to define the purpose and scope of our flowchart. In other words, we need to answer the question of why we're making one in the first place. For this example, we're going to be visualizing the first steps of an onboarding process. This will help new hires know exactly what to expect, and it will make sure that our department stays consistent. Step 2, we need to identify our tasks and then place them in chronological order. For this onboarding scenario, let's add the following tasks. So if you're following along in Lucidchart, navigate to the flowchart library and then begin dragging and dropping the process shape onto the board. Don't worry about the other shapes right now, as we're really just focused on getting our steps on the board. Once you've got them added, we can focus on getting them in chronological order. All right, your steps should look something like this. Our third step is to format the tasks by type and corresponding symbol. Now is where we need to review our steps and change the shapes to match what's actually happening in the process. So for our first step, we know that it's the start of the process, so we'll want to use the terminator shape. Our next step involves sending out documentation, so we'll want to use the document symbol. The background check is a process that takes place, so we're going to leave it as a process shape. Now, we know the background check takes time, so we'll adjust it to the delay shape because it holds up the rest of our process. Next up, we have a decision that takes place. Did the employee pass the background check, or was there something found that would require us to rescind the offer? If they passed, we can continue and send the employee new documentation, as shown with the document shape. If they didn't pass, the onboarding process ends and we'll rescind the offer. So we'll demonstrate this with the end or terminator symbol. Because employee setup is the next part of the process, we'll continue with the process shape and connect it to an off-page link so that others know they need to go to another page or document to find that process. Now that everything's in order, we can finish our flowchart by adding the flow. To do this, connect the shapes with lines by dragging the red node onto the next shape. you'll notice an arrow appears, giving our flowchart a direction. The last step is to confirm your flowchart. This last step is where Lucidchart really shines. Invite others to review your diagram. Test it out. Find other ways to improve it. See if you forgot anything. The power of visual collaboration really comes to life whenever you work with others to see a process and then build it together.
Unfortunately, completing this final step means that our time together is coming to a close. So, to keep things brief, let's do a quick recap of what we've learned. First, we learned that a flowchart is a visual representation of a process or system. Second, we learned that flowcharts help us identify specific steps, simplify complex information, and communicate ideas at faster speeds. Third, we reviewed common flowchart symbols and walked through a few examples to see how they're used. And fourth, finally, we followed the 5 steps to building a flowchart together.
And if you liked this video and would like to learn more about diagramming or other methods of visual collaboration, check out training.lucid.co.
Thanks for watching,
And happy diagramming.